morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to another PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Steve's here already because we're kind of a bit all over the place today. Hi, Steve.
Hi, mate. How you going? I was just saying I was trying to stay quiet and not interrupt your radio announcer-like intro.
Yeah, normally I do a much longer intro, but it's very short today. I did actually do one. I did actually try to do one before we hooked up on Zoom, but it didn't really work out, so I deleted it. Yeah, so this is Friday's episode. You already know that because you're listening to it on a Friday. Steve and I, as I said before, we don't record this on Friday. We're recording this on a Wednesday. Oh, it's Wednesday morning here in London. Gloomy morning.
We're so organised.
Yeah, we're so organised. We're always doing it. I've actually had a bit of a... if you haven't been to the podcast already, I should always say this at the beginning, and I know a lot of you guys have. My name is Michael Bath. Steve is on the other line from Sydney. I'm in London, usually in Bahrain. And we have 2 episodes of the PorscheCooled Podcast. We have this one, which goes up on a Friday. And we have the PorscheCooled Owner Stories, which is... getting up there in numbers, Steve. That comes up on a Tuesday, and this week's episode went up, and we had I had Paul, and Paul was from Auckland in New Zealand, which was a really good story.
It's good. It's really good. I enjoyed it. Paul sounds like a really nice bloke. Very lucky in his Porsche car ownership. And
yeah,
he's got just interesting things to say too about some of the cars that he's owned.
Yeah, we'll talk about his stories. We'll talk about him actually. We'll talk about his story in a bit in depth. But just before we get into that, Steve, yeah. So I've been recording owner stories this week. I did Paul, which has already gone up, which you guys have already heard. I did Mark in Melbourne. I have to remember. I'm so sorry. My memory this morning is terrible. I was just saying that to Steve before. I'm getting confused with names and remembering things this morning. I had Mark from Perth. Sorry, not Melbourne. Mark from Perth. And Mark's got the 356. So that's coming up. If you're interested in 356s, that's next week's owner's story. David from Melbourne will be the week after that. And he is first owner. He's got a really good story, David, actually. It's like... if you've been waiting for a long time, and I know I've spoken to people on my YouTube channel who are in the same situation, you keep thinking you're going to get one, and then something happens and it falls through, Steve, and then, years passed, and then you eventually buy one, and then, your excitement, I don't know.
That would drive me mental. I don't think I could wait years.
Well, actually years. And
yeah, I don't think I could do it. I'd have to cap myself before that would happen.
This is what I like about owner stories, though, and I've said this before. It's like, it's not about, and I know people have been contacting me saying, "Oh, is this going to be okay? People are going to be interested." And it's like, I'm interested. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like how we've got the variety in the owner stories. You know what I mean? It's great to have people on like Paul who've owned a lot of cars and who know about Porsche. I mean, Paul, in this week's episode is the president of the Porsche Club in New Zealand. He's grown up with Porsches. That's a great story. I like that story as well. But I also like the story where someone has been struggling to get a car. They've been waiting for years and they get one. I'm not struggling, but things in life come up and you get one, Steve. Yeah. And David's enthusiasm and the love of Porsche is just as strong as anyone's, and that's a really good story. And that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Then I have another, I think I can mention his name because I think he said he'll definitely come on it. I have Nick, who's coming on from the UK.
He is now.
Nick is involved in classic cars, I think. I think he has a few classic cars. I'm not 100% sure, Nick. Sorry if you're listening and I'm incorrect. But Nick has just bought a 912 and he's imported it from the US. It took a long time to arrive. It arrived a couple of weeks ago. He reached out to me and we were chatting on Instagram one night. So I've asked Paul, see what's happening this morning? I keep changing names. I don't know what's wrong with me. Sorry, guys. Nick is going to come on and talk about the 912, the buying process, getting the 912 to the UK, the costs involved and what he was looking for. I mean, he seems to have found a really, really good one. So that's going to be another good story. And I'm interested because of my interest in the 912. So I'm interested in chatting to him about that. So we've got some good ones coming up, Steve. And I'm not going to mention everyone else that's waiting, but there's a lot of other people who are waiting to come on. So that's going to be really good. So that's coming up in the next months, I guess, because I think I seriously have another 5 or 6 people that I haven't actually scheduled yet. So probably more actually. So it's all happening, Steve. It's all happening. what's been happening? What's been happening with you? I need to stop talking for a second.
Not a great deal. I went for a early Sunday morning drive with my mate who bought his new to him GT3.
Yep.
That was mad fun, actually. We met up at 6:30, and his father-in-law joined us on a sports bike. I know nothing about motorbikes. I know they look and sound cool, but I don't really know a hell of a lot. But he rolled up on a BMW 1000R, is it? Or is it a 1000S? Does that?
Yeah. Is it 1000R or RR? I think I know the bike you mean. It's the sort of pinnacle of the sport bike BMW range, which competed with all the Japanese bikes.
Yeah. So
it's a nice looking bike, actually.
Yeah, very nice looking bike.
What color was
too?
What livery did he have on it? What was the color?
White with the sort of M Sport kind of colors. The
So
tri-colors.
the really nice one. It's an expensive bike in Australia. I think it's close to 30,000 Australian dollars, that bike. I could be wrong, or right. Middle 25, maybe 25,000 Australian dollars. It's not a cheap bike.
Yeah, I had a mate that had a 1199 Panigale Ducati.
Yeah. Your mate's Panigale, which was parked in our building once in Sydney. Yep. That's a very beautiful bike. That
was even more expensive than that, right?
Yeah, that's more expensive. The Panigales are more expensive, I think. Yeah, for sure.
But so we went for a drive up sort of towards the Central Coast, sort of up the old Pacific Highway, on some roads that I think I may have kind of been on before, but I hadn't done it in the actual kind of loop that my mate and his father-in-law, I think they obviously do it quite regularly.
Right.
And it was great. It's really fun.
Just so the listeners know that, Steve, the old Pacific Highway is outside of Sydney. It's going north towards up the north coast of Australia. And it's close to Sydney. It's close to the northern suburbs of Sydney. And Steve and I drive that road, and we stop at a certain point because basically we have no idea where we're going. We probably should just pull out a map and look that we can cut in somewhere else.
We got lost once, remember that?
Yeah, we got lost once, and then I think you can cut in, and I think, doesn't it cut into the Putty Road sort of thing somewhere in there? Doesn't it like loop around?
Well, it joins up at Wollombi, which is sort of where my mate wanted to kind of fully go, but we started to run out of time, and his father-in-law had to kind of bail out, and then I sort of had to bail out as well. But there's some really good roads. Like where we stop, we really need to kind of keep going, and then instead of turning left back in where you think that you're, if you kind of follow the signs, you actually turn right. I was actually just trying to write it all out so the next time we kind of go, we can try to mimic it.
We do a U-turn. Steve and I do a U-turn at the end section of the road, and people from Australia will know what we're talking about, where the road splits. And we normally do
Calgary interchange.
Yeah, Calgary interchange, I think it's called. And we normally do a U-turn there. I know you can go further towards the Central Coast, and I know a lot of people when they drive to the Central Coast, and I guess I should do this when I go and see my family, because my family are on the Central Coast. You can go the old pack, and then you can go around, through the entrance and then back around that way, because I always see a lot of bikes there when I'm driving over to my brother's, motorbikes and stuff like that. Especially on the weekends, you see people who are obviously doing that loop. I think they come Old Pacific Highway, Steve. Then they go into the entrance, or they go through the back of Gosford, and then they go into the entrance. And then when they come out at the intersection, which is near where my parents' house is. And then you cut straight across, and you go in a little bit. It's not Freeman's Waterhole, but it's kind of in that direction where it's sort of Maitland-ish, and you go around the back way. And then when you come back around the back way through the back of what they call Maitland in Newcastle in New South Wales, but I think it cuts through Freeman's Waterhole, and then I think that's Wollombi, and then you come back around. I think it comes back around to part of that road when we went on Old Putty Road, doesn't it? It's kind of that same sort of area if you want to do a really long drive. It does join up. Yeah,
but you got it's kind of going through Summersby and Kulnara.
Kulnura.
And so through the kind of central mangrove sort of
mangrove
area.
forest, mangrove mountain and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's a drive. I think I've seen that possibly Porsche Club in New South Wales do the Wollombi Wollombi Drive, isn't it? I see that come up on something when they say they go via Wollombi or whatever it's called, if that's how you pronounce it.
I always thought that was the Putty Road one that we did when you were here last year. But it joins up. It joins up.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Look, so it was pretty cool. It was kind of weird following what basically was like the doppelganger of my car.
Is your mate's
sort of following a
GT3,
white GT3?
is it an 07 or an 08? I forgot. I couldn't remember what you said last week.
I think it's an 07. I think it's an 07.
And yours is an 08, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
But there's nothing really, there's no difference between an 07 and an 08?
No. The only changes are when you kind of get from Gen 1 to Gen 2 sort of thing.
So how was it? How did it look?
Yeah, his car's good. I was a little bit nervous for him, same way I kind of felt, because like when you haven't sort of seen the actual car that you're buying and it's a significant amount of money and all of that sort of stuff, you're always kind of going, oh, this could be a bit sketch. But as we were discussing last podcast, realistically, if it's a good car, then all it means is that you're just going to pay a little bit more money if there's some stuff to fix up. But it's in really good nick. The paint's good. My mate sort of said that he thought that there was a little rattle in the front left strut, but I kind of had said I sent him something that was actually in a Porsche manual, which was basically outlining that there's all these kind of weird noises, like you get creaks from the springs and groans from this and that and everything else. So
has he taken it? Has he taken it to Porsche to get it looked over? Has he had a service done on it? Because last week you said that the guy that he bought it from was tracking it in Bathurst. So the car in a better condition than you thought it would be because it has been tracked? Were you expecting that it'd have some stone chips and stuff because it had been tracked? And gravel rash around in the wheel arches, the gravel rash in the wheel arches. You know how you told me yours had a mark once, and you said, "Oh, that's because the guy might have tracked it beforehand or something." Didn't you tell me that about your car?
Comparatively, his car, like mine, has sort of been used on the track, which I think like if you're honest, most GT3s probably will. So, I know when I was sort of searching for mine, most people kind of said it's a bit unrealistic to kind of try to find a GT3 that hasn't been to the track because, 997 we're talking. I'm assuming maybe 991s and the later that they kind of went on, maybe they're not quite so track oriented. Like they're capable in a track, but maybe the kind of customers are maybe less inclined. So by comparison, his paintwork's better than mine. There wasn't the sort of sandblasting and the gravel rush, which I've kind of got on the inside of the wheel arches, like you just kind of mentioned. The front of his car sort of had a bit of PPF on it, which is looking a bit tatty. And I think he's considering
it's gone yellow or it's coming off.
It's not the best job in terms of it's rather than sort of being one piece and kind of stretched around everything. It's sort of cut in many sort of panels and sections.
Oh, really?
So I think it's kind of lifting on the edges a little bit and stuff like that. But
you think the previous owner did that himself because he wanted to protect it for the track?
I'd say so. Like if I was going to spend a lot of time on the track, I would wrap my car as well.
So is your mate going to take that off and get it done more professionally, or is he going to leave the wrap on, the PPF on?
Not sure. I think he suggested that he might peel it off. He said to me that it was looking a bit tatty, and I said just peel it off. And then the paint underneath should be really good, and then it's kind of up to him whether or not he wants to rewrap it. I think certainly he could have it rewrapped better than the job that's been done, to my eyes. But
so is he getting a full service on it? Is he taking it in to get checked? Because I
don't know. He wasn't. I sort of suggested that, like, look, if that was me or I'm assuming you, that's probably one of the first things that I would do.
Get the oil changed.
But, he said that the previous owner got the car serviced every 1,000 kilometres, which is, I'm assuming, diligent kind of track person sort of service scheduling as well.
I don't even do that. Do you do that? I don't get my car serviced every 1,000 kilometres. Once a year, but it's not 1,000 kilometres.
You don't track it.
I don't track it, yeah. So. it's interesting though, isn't it? I mean, the more people I'm getting on owner stories, the more people who, do actually track their car. You know what I mean? Paul tracks his GTS. Obviously James has got track cars. Like more and more people. A lot of people track their cars. So I guess you're right.
It's
if you're going to buy
the brand,
and if you're going to buy a GT car, but maybe it's not even a GT car. Even if you're going to buy a GTS, maybe it has been tracked, and people don't seem to. I don't think most people would think of asking the question about a GTS. Has it been tracked? But it could have been tracked. But you don't think it's a bad thing if a car's been tracked, right? It's not.
Not if it's been looked after properly.
Yeah.
My basic understanding of it is that call it a GT3. Like, you can inevitably expect that it probably has spent some time on a track, as long as like all the kind of really common things is like ideally, yes, maybe it is wrapped in PPF because you are more prone to kind of stone chips and stuff like that. As long as it's had regular brake fluid changes and oil changes and all of that sort of stuff, as long as the car's been kind of cooled down after, like, doing some kind of proper laps and all that sort of stuff, like that is the heritage of the brand. They're supposed to be the absolute classic thing of you can drive to the track, put it on the track, enjoy it, and then drive it home again, and it's reliable and it will actually function rather than sort of being trailered and stuff. So like I guess I was sort of implying, maybe these days, like GT3 owners maybe aren't sort of so track oriented. Hence, like what Paul in New Zealand was kind of saying about the 996.2 GT3, where he sort of felt like it was a bit too rough for the road, but really great on the track.
Yeah.
I'd hazard a guess that maybe kind of like the newer cars. Maybe are taken less to sort of tracks than the older days, like in 996s and 997s.
Yeah, you're probably right, isn't it? It's like changing. Like maybe even you think even people within the 70s and 80s with their Porsches were taking them to the tracks pre-GTs.
Yeah.
They were, right? So it was a thing. It's just become, I don't know. Have and I don't want to be upset anyone, but have people become too fussy with their cars? Is that what has happened? It's become, instead of being a driving experience, has it become more of a show-off thing? And let's be honest, the GT cars, when you see them on Instagram and that, they're a little bit of a show-off thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a few people.
It's a bit more of a statusy thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about putting the PPF on to keep it completely immaculate, and and not really using it, like you said, to its full potential. And I think it's exactly what you said, Stephen. You forget about that. That's what Porsches are known for. It's like, track to the road, it's, it's a one sort of type of car, and it doesn't have to be a GT car to take it to the track. That's the other thing. That's why I thought it was good how Paul's taking his GT, the picture that one of the images that Paul sent me for my Instagram to promote the podcast is him on the track with his GTS. I think that's great.
Yeah. I'm sort of contradicting myself because I sort of feel like I really should kind of go to the track. And I've been invited, I've said it that many times, I've been invited out, by Autohouse and various, like in the old days, like when I worked on car accounts, all of that sort of stuff. And I just sort of never did it because I think I was just very nervous and conservative. Even my mate, now that he's kind of got his, he's super keen to go and get some driver training. He has done track days on his bike. I think he had tracked his 964 a tiny little bit as well. So I know he's dead keen to kind of, go out and make the most of it. And I'm sure he's going to buzz me and sort of say, come along kind of thing.
But I think that's great that you have someone else in a GT3. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm waiting for you, mate.
You're waiting for me. I know you're waiting for a long time. But hang on, I want to get to something. Do you think the reason why you don't want to go to the track though is not, because as people know, you don't put pictures on your Instagram. You're a private person. Do you think it's because of that, or do you think it's because in the back of your mind you're worried about your car getting chipped, damaged, marked?
No, I'm not.
Would you rather have like a beat up, wrecked 996 or GT3 like what James bought in Melbourne? You pick up one and you use that as a track car. Would that make you feel better?
Interesting question. I haven't really thought about it that hard, and I don't have the funds to kind of have like a beat up, like Boxster or Cayman to kind of, like we were talking about however long ago that was.
Yeah. I think I would feel better with that though. I think personally, if I had my GT3, I'd be, I'm a bit of a wuss, as they call in Australia, but I don't think I would like to take it to the track. I think what I would do though, Steve, is I would get maybe more involved with Porsche clubs, New South Wales or whatever, the things they have, the Motorcanas and those things. Maybe they're kind of track days, but they're not really, I guess, are they? I don't know, the things that Porsche Club
I know
events,
what you're saying.
those sort of things, but a full track day where you're really like pushing it. And I know that
That's
Nick in Melbourne, who had the YGT3 like yours, who I chat to on Instagram every now and again, Architect Driving on Instagram. I know he did a lot of track days, and people do it, and people enjoy, and it's obviously a lot of fun. It's obviously a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
But I think I'd be a bit scared. I think I'd be a bit scared about my car. I don't know, I'm a bit precious.
I'm not necessarily scared of binning it because I reckon I wouldn't be so loony to kind of, I think you have to kind of make a fairly monstrous mistake to kind of, truly kind of bin your car. It wouldn't be until you get sort of fully enthusiastic and then you're sort of really trying to kind of beat your own times or whatever that you're going to get yourself in that sort of situation. Like particularly in Sydney, you've only really got like what was Eastern Creek, like Sydney Motorsport Park, and I'm sure there's tons of runoff. So
no, but someone told me a track to go to was at Wakefield Park.
Wakefield, yeah.
Yeah, Wakefield, and to do these track days. I think David told me that actually. David in Sydney.
Yeah.
Sorry, David. I'm pretty sure it was.
They're the two.
Yeah.
They're the two tracks. So I've kind of been on both in like client sort of shitty sort of drive day type things. It's not proper track kind of things. So to answer your question, why have I been so hesitant? I think I'm a little bit wussy like you, a little bit sort of scared of actually catching the bug because you just sort of know that you're going to wind up going down this rabbit hole where you're just going to sort of wind up having to spend. And I have no idea. I've never looked into like how much track insurance costs.
Yeah.
Plus tires and brakes and like the whole kind of thing. Plus the kind of wear and tear on your car. So it probably is a little bit of that. But then like I said, to contradict myself. That's what Porsches are built for. So, and if anything, a GT3 can handle that. So,
yeah, and they are. That's what they're built for, like you said. I think, though, personally, based on no experience that I have on the track, I think I would still feel more comfortable finding, like Built by Jeff has bought that. I mean, I think he's had track experience on YouTube. Built by Jeff Go bought that really ugly Boxster that was someone had done some crazy stuff to it. I think I'd still feel more, and I think James said the same thing from Melbourne. I think I would really seriously think about getting the cheapest Boxster I could find, and just slowly like tweaking it and just having it as the separate track car. I think I would feel more comfortable in doing that personally. And then you can put stupid livery on it. You can put the fucking, sorry, I shouldn't swear. You put the thing on the side, the donut and numbers, and put some crazy. I don't know. I don't think I'd do it with my main car. I don't think I'd feel comfortable doing it with my main car.
Don't know. I'm not sure. Because my GT3 isn't, like, it's in really good condition, but it's still, like a, 12-year-old car? And it has been on the track, and you can tell by some of the kind of gravel rash underneath and all of that sort of stuff. It's not like it's a brand new car that I would have worries about sort of, some of that sort of stuff happening to it because it's already in that kind of condition. So I can't really use that as an excuse to not really kind of do it. So
how did you, I forget what happened, when you bought your car, you knew that the guy had tracked it, right? You asked him and he said he had put it on the track.
Not the guy I bought it from. Right. Not the guy I bought it from hadn't. He had only owned it for about a year. He told me that he did one day, but it was sort of more like advanced driver training kind of thing as opposed to like track. So like obviously there's kind of different degrees of, when you sort of say track day. I think again, like we talked about in the past, like my ideal is just to kind of ease into it and sort of not go when there's, where it's kind of really full on. More like sounds like a Burrows drive day is sort of, in groups of kind of skill and experience levels, and you've kind of got instructors next to you. That's kind of like the ideal thing for me to kind of start off on.
So the guy you bought it from when you bought your car, he only kept it for 1 year. I didn't realize that. So he
only
just
a year or two. Yeah.
He didn't enjoy it.
No, he's moving overseas.
Oh, he's moving
He
overseas.
he was a tech guy that landed a gig in Facebook, so he was moving to Silicon Valley.
Okay.
So he had to let go of his car.
It wasn't the classic "I'm moving overseas" advertisement that most people say when they're selling a car. I'm moving overseas.
Yeah, no, he was.
What is
his
that?
dude was genuine.
What is that with? I mean, every article, every car for sale, everyone's moving overseas. I'm relocating overseas.
Either that or
Unexpectedly.
it's one lady driver or one elderly gentleman enthusiast driver. It's like,
See, with the current COVID situation, you can't say you're moving overseas because is it really possible from Australia? You're not.
Yeah.
But going back to the track days and the track car, James from Melbourne, who was on a few owner stories ago, who had the Cup cars and had the 924 Turbo. James is a really nice guy. I just noticed yesterday or the day before, he's on Outlaw Garage. Now, Outlaw Garage is a channel on YouTube. I think the guy used to be living in Dubai. He's got like a raw metal 356. He does videos about Porsches in Melbourne because I think he lives in Melbourne. I think he's originally from Perth because the guy I spoke to, Mark that I spoke to, who's also got a YouTube channel also, by the way, with the 356, he knows of him or knows him. But there's a video up, you should check it out, is James is going through and showing his yellow Cup car that we talked about in the podcast. So he's Outlaw Garage has gone to his house and they've got the garage and he's talking about the car. I think there's a 924 in the video as well, which must be the new 924 that James has bought, I think. So that's worthwhile to check that out, Steve.
Yeah, cool. Sorry, just to round that out, from the original part was the good news is my mate's super happy. It's really fun to kind of watch somebody go through the whole kind of thing because he was obviously a bit nervous about the cash that he'd spent and all of that sort of stuff. And then, driving enthusiastically early Sunday morning, following him around, car sounds great, blah, blah, blah. He gets out and he just kind of said, it's unreal. It's better than he thought that it was ever going to be. It's exceeded his expectations. It's just kind of, you just kind of get a little bit sort of excited and amped when you kind of watch somebody else go through all of that. So I'm waiting for you to go through that.
Yeah, when I can get back to Sydney.
And one other little update was the magnographic wheel archy protection things.
That you mentioned last week that arrived, yeah?
Yep. They don't fall off. They're good.
Oh, they don't fall off. So you took them, you left them on. They didn't end up on the old Pacific Highway somewhere.
No, I didn't take them out then. I was a bit nervous about that, but I've gone for a couple of drives here and there, and they're good. They're solid.
Did you show your mate? Does he want them?
No, I think last time he saw my car, I had the actual proper ones on. So I reckon he's gonna. I reckon he's going to, because he started to prod me about certain things that I'd done to my car, and he's going to get a big shove down the slippery.
Oh, he's going to start. Is he going to start looking at the carbon and stuff like that?
Don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if he's into all of that stuff, but he could. He started asking me questions about certain things, so I think he's starting to appreciate the shit that I've done to my car.
Is he going to change the exhaust? Did you tell him you've got a few spare ones lying around if he needs to buy one?
he's came with one. I think really? I crawled underneath to have a look at it. I think it might be a Fab Speed one, and it sounds really good. Good.
Now I remember going back to Fab Speed, Steve. You told me that you don't put Fab Speed on a Porsche because Fab Speed are only made for Ferrari. You remember saying that to me? You remember saying that to me? Come on.
No.
You remember. Yes, you did.
You said that in a previous podcast and I corrected you then as well, you muppet.
You did.
You're talking about the Tubi style thing.
Oh, it's Tubi. That's right. Sorry. Why do Tubi and Fab Speed always sound the same? Tubi's the Ferrari one. That's right. Which you get for your 328 GTS if you're looking at buying one. It's a lovely car, that 328 GTS. God, it's a nice car. I looked at prices of them there. I can't believe they're almost the same price as a 912. I just find that this is what I'm finding very Steve, the 912 that was for sale, the slate grey one, which was the ideal 912, which was for sale in Wales, which literally lasted 4 days, right? The bare metal restoration. I sent it to Ajmal. I sent it to a few people, you and a few other people. That was £55,000. £55,000. A £50,000 50,000, what is it, 50,000 mile? 50,000 miles is about 80,000 kilometer. A 50,000 mile Ferrari 328 GTS is right-hand drive too, not a left-hand drive. I'm talking right-hand drive.
Yep.
59,000 pounds. So pretty much the same price. Of course, the 328s go up to 79, but the 912s also go up to 79, you know. As I said the other week, 912 Revival have a grey, slate grey 912 for sale for 79,000, almost 80,000 pounds. So this is where I get confused with values and pricing, and I struggle a little bit, as much as I love the 912. Don't get me wrong. And I think what Ajmal's done, getting the one for 30,000 pounds, still not cheap, you know, but, you know, but I struggle with the fact that a Ferrari, an 87 Ferrari, is the same price as a 65 to 69, well, not even a 65. The 65s have gone up in price. So 67 to 69, 912. And it's the same price. I don't know. I struggle with that a little bit. And I know the Ferrari values are down and 912 prices are going up. But I also think about what Paul said about, was it Paul that said it in last in this podcast this week? You know, it's like what he calls the fashion Porsches that become like the 964. It's become like the fashion Porsche. And I think the 912 is a little bit like that. Like the values have gone super inflated. And of course, it's all relative and it's based on the 911 prices. We can keep coming back to that the 911E, the 911T, you know, the T, the E, the S are all, you know, expensive now. And I guess people want to get into that shape, you know, and I think Paul said it, you know, when it's parked on the street, of course people are going to sit there and look at the 912, but he said you have to drive one. I mean, I don't know whether we spoke about this on the podcast or it was after, because I spoke to him for quite some time.
I think he spoke about that bit,
Yeah, well, he was just saying that, you know, the comfort factor, the seats and how you feel in the car, you know, the bigger steering wheel, you know, you really have to really enjoy that because, you park it in the street, you know, behind the Ferrari, or you park it behind another modern 911, people are going to look at it and people are going to love it because the shape is that iconic shape and it's such a cute car. But is the driving experience and is the drive of it going to match up? And I mean, this is why we need to talk to Ajmal again, because Ajmal's been driving his and had his for some time, and I'm also interested to talk to, I don't think Nick in the UK that I want to get on, I don't think he's driven his 912 as much yet. I think it's still somewhere, I think it's past customs, but I think he may be getting stuff done with it, I think. So that's what I'm interested in seeing, what the, you know, you can watch Ajmal, you know, flat cap drivers videos, Ajmal's videos on YouTube, and you can see what it's like in the car. And, you know, it's, don't get me wrong, I haven't changed my mind on it, but it makes you think, you know what I mean, Steve, when the buying process, like why these values are getting to a point, when is the value too much? You know?
I think you need to weigh it up against the money too, because I know that the reason why you're considering it and you're tempted by it and all of that sort of stuff, you're not really kind of buying it purely on the driving experience. But, you know, like it'll get to the point where it's sort of like, oh, okay, so for like 120 Aussie, like does that driving experience kind of correlate to 120 kind of thing? And to me, actually, this kind of segues nicely into the question that I've got for you, which I know you already know this question, but because I'd sort of go, so nice segue. Yeah, like it's just because it's just kind of getting to the point where it's a shitload of money, isn't it? And as beautiful as they are, you kind of want, like the more money you pay, you're kind of going to want the whole experience to be equally as good. Like, you know, the more and more it kind of goes up. So it's a nice segue into the question I've kind of got for you, because we kind of keep talking about all this sort of ideal stuff, and I know you're kind of constantly hunting and thinking. But if I put it to you that at the moment you've got your 997 Carrera base, which is a lovely example of it, really low mileage, you know, like you've kind of done all these great things to it and it's, you know, like it's tip-top right now. If you had the choice between trading that car in and getting, say, like a 997.1 GT3, so similar to mine and my mates, so I don't know what, you got to tip in like another, call it 100, bit over 100 grand, like maybe 110, 120 for it. So you got to trade it in.
If you're at the bottom end of the GT3 prices, if you're looking at a GT3 for 200k, 997.1 GT3, if you get one for 200k, I doubt I would get, even though I think, you know, if I'm going to do the easy route and sell my car to a dealer, I'd say I'd probably still only get 80.
You wouldn't do that. You'd sell it privately. But anyway, so just pretend that's one way of doing it, right? So your next move is you sell your 997 base Carrera for a GT3 and you tip like your 110, 120 in, or you hang on to your 997 Carrera and then you take your 110 or 120 and you go and buy yourself a 912. Which way would you go?
I think that I would buy the GT3
Mm-hmm.
if I was in the if I could drive it and enjoy it. I think I'd probably do the GT3 if I could only have one.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? I don't think I could live. Yeah. I don't think there's any way I could live with a 912 as my only car. And I think Ajmal.
It wouldn't be your only car. You'd still have your 997.
Oh, I'd have
Carrera.
my 997.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, 997 and a 912. It's a tricky one. I mean, I could go either way, to be honest. I mean, I guess
because you keep pondering it.
Yeah, no, and I guess if a really good 997.1 GT3 came up for around 220k, and
silver
like I
one.
said,
There's a
and
silver
like
one in Perth, isn't there?
I don't think there's any at 220k. There's one at 240k.
And that other one that
one.
popped up on there's a guy on Porsche Forums Australia that's got like a 30,000.
He won't sell that for
with
that.
Ceramics.
He'll sell that for more, that car.
Maybe.
I think he'll sell it for more, mate. I think people want. I don't know. I know that on Porsche forums they always say that people are overcharging for cars, but I think that they would still charge. They would still want more for that car. I saw that the silver one you said. I mean, I don't understand why the one on car sales or the silver GT3, the 0.1 that looks really good to me, that it's just sitting there. The one for two. I can't remember if it's 239, 249. That one that
It's overpriced because it's 245. I think it was 240, 245.
Yeah, but then you got the 0.2 guy that's still selling his for 319 or 310.
Yeah.
See, I think that's
also overpriced.
See, this is how crazy I am. I look at that 997.2, and honestly, if I could afford it, I would probably do a crazy thing and buy that car because it's spec'd. I love the spec of it. I love how it's got the Alcantara on the bottom of the glove box, and it's got the leather, and it's got
lower
the seats, and it's in white. And I always like, the GT3 to me always looks great in white, like yours. And I know it's 0.2, and you're more of a fan of the 0.1, but I don't have a problem with the 0.2. And that one to me is pretty damn nice. You know what I mean? Like, it really is a nice example. It's a really difficult question, Steve, because I really do think I need two cars, and we talk about speaking about this during these COVID times, and when I was talking to David yesterday for upcoming Porsche stories, like you don't want to say you want another car, and it sort of like feels like the wrong time to talk about this, but
sure.
I really do feel like I need two Porsches.
Why?
Or I need two cars. I'm not going to get onto my other thing because people are going to think I'm going crazy. I don't know. I think you need the two experiences, and obviously I think. See, I don't think you could have a GT3 and a 912 together. I think it's not a good balance. You know what I mean? I think the GT3 and a 912 to me is not a good balance. I think if you had a GT3 and a 912, you need another one in between.
Yep.
But I think if you have a 997 Carrera or Carrera S, even a Carrera GTS, and a 912, then I think that's okay. You know what I mean? So. But then you're talking about more money to change over. So you buy a 912.
Exactly.
You buy a 912.
All of a sudden, from my hypothetical, you've won the lotto.
Yeah. You buy a 912, you sell a 997, and maybe you find you can't buy a 997 GTS because, like I said, I wouldn't buy one in PDK, and PDK are only available in Australia. That's what was so good about Paul's, that it was the 6-speed manual that he purchased from the UK, which you can in New Zealand, but you can't do that in Australia unless you're relocating or whatever.
But even at like if the last one went for over 200, that's mental. I'm not shitting on GTSs, but like at the same kind of money, like you'd get a GT3.
Yeah, but I don't know. You always say the GT3s are 200, but they're not really 200, are they? I mean, they're a bit more than 200, like 220.
Depends which one you're talking about. It really depends which one you're talking about. But
I don't know.
The reason why
and then the other thing I think about, the 997 Carrera, I love my car, and I would like to keep it. Do you buy, and this is the other question. Hang on. The first scenario is, do you keep the 997, stay in the 997 generation, but do I get a 997, do I try to find a really good 997.2S, right? in manual.
To
997.2.
replace your...
Yeah, to replace my Carrera. So do I get a 997.2 Carrera S, which are sitting about 150, 160 Australian? But then that's getting close to GT3 price. But then, 160 plus 90 for a 912, then that's 250. You know what I mean? It's still cheaper than buying a... You know what I mean? Like, I kind of see all these scenarios and I try to work it out. And this is the fun of, when you think you can buy it. Or then I
was basically giving you call it about 120 grand to play with. And I was kind of trying to narrow your options down because I knew you'd answer the way that you just have.
Yeah. So I don't really know.
You're all over the shop. But...
Or do you go completely off center and do you just, like what James told me, do you look for an SC and do you get an SC?
Yeah.
And then last night I'm listening to Magnus Walker Live with on Instagram with the guy from Porsche Atlanta, and he's saying he's on the hunt for a 944 Silver Rose. And it's just funny, there's actually a 944 Turbo S Silver Rose for sale on car sales, which has been for sale for a while, which is 50,000.
Sort of slightly pinky color thing?
Yeah, it's pink and it's got pink sort of tartan interior and pink dash. It's like full on, right? But it was that limited Turbo S. And there's actually one for sale in Australia. It's been for sale for a while. I think it's 50 or 59,000 Australian dollars, something like that.
Right.
And you think, is that a good end? Is that something to do? Because the 912 is getting to the point where it's so expensive. Is that something to do? You know what I mean? There's so many options in Porsche, and this is the thing about when you start getting hooked into the brand like we all are, and you start thinking, I didn't think about that one. I didn't think about the 924 Turbo until I started talking to James, and he was telling me how great it was and how nimble it was, and and it's like, where do you stop? And this, I can see why people become Porsche collectors and have these huge collections, because honestly, where do you stop?
If you have the means. I suppose it's a different world. Yeah, if you've got the means, exactly.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to go. But to answer that question, Steve, I really don't know. I mean, I really wanted GT3, you know that. And and I keep thinking it's either 997.1 or 0.2. Or, I mean, there is that 996 GT3 for sale on car sales in Australia for 179, the 0.2, which is quite a beautiful example, actually. Did you see that one? That's a really nice example. It's kind of tempting, but I still think I would prefer a 997. And obviously the next step up is the 991.2 GT3 in manual. I mean, that's the two choices. But
over 300 grand, yeah.
But do I keep the 997 Carrera and get a 912? That was the plan. I'm kind of rethinking that plan now, whether that works perfectly for me.
I'll explain to you why the question, or the way that I kind of see the conundrum. It's a fun conundrum, but...
Or, tempted by Paul's episode, do I keep the 997 Carrera and do I get a Ferrari 328 GTS?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have one Porsche, one Ferrari. Is that something, there's so many options here, you know what I mean?
I'll put it to you, so the way that I was trying to kind of, like in my brain, think about it was that if you were going to kind of go, okay, like, I'm not sort of saying that there's anything wrong with your career or anything like that at all, but if you're still just kind of horsing around and you've got a little bit of money to burn, to me, your option is to, in thinking about something like a GT3, you're getting a bump in performance and kind of thrills from where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Or you either you still got performance, obviously. You stay at that level and then you kind of add to the mix sort of more like the kind of, more classic kind of experience and all of that sort of stuff. But I would have thought, not that I should speak on your behalf, but that it's probably a more interesting way to go to get a taste for kind of a bit more kind of performance before you go back to the sort of truly vintage stuff.
Right. So you say go up the chain and get something more special, more finely tuned.
More performance. More performance. Like more speed, more grip, more like all of that kind of stuff. Get a taste for that before you then kind of go, you're going to get the appreciation for like the kind of the sort of true classics. A little bit like, what I think what Spike was sort of saying, Jerry had sort of said to him, like you kind of going all out first, and then you'll start to kind of get a true appreciation for something as old as a 356 or whatever else.
Yeah.
Like in a more everyman sort of way, as opposed to, I'm not sort of saying you've got to go and get a Carrera GT or a GT2 first.
No, it's a good dilemma to be in. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Obviously,
it's just a fun conversation.
And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I can afford to do the changeover if I wanted to do it. My problem is I think about it for probably too long. And just say you're right. I mean, if I sold my Carrera, and prices of 997s are on the rise in Australia, it seems, from what I've seen. They have actually gone up a lot in the last 6 months. So just say I could get 90.
You get good money for your car.
Say I could get 90 if I did a private sale, and if I did a private sale, it'd be 90. You're right. I'd have to add in 130. Let's just say a 220,000 GT3. I'd have to load in 130. Now 130, is getting up there with the really good 912s. Once you get, and I'm talking about buying it in the UK, getting it shipped across, or buying it in the US. US prices seem to be higher because US prices are getting up to $50,000 or whatever. And then by the time you ship it, it's not that much, but let's just say by the time you do compliance in Australia, you're getting close to the same amount of money, similar money.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a tricky one, and I can't work it out at the moment. I really don't know. I really don't know.
It's a fun thing to think about.
Yeah, it is. And I have to say, I think as a 3-car collection, and I know we've always talked about this 3-car collection thing, and we've never really spoken about it that much. I think what Paul in New Zealand has is a really nice mix, because he's got that 3.2 Carrera. It's in Guards Red. It's got that nice interior with that piping seats, it looks like from the image. It's a G50 gearbox. It's got it's the right car. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then he's got the sort of modern 911 with the 997 GTS, 6-speed as well. It's a car you can drive every day, but you can take it on the track, which he's shown.
Yep.
And then, for something, and I'm not saying it's flashy, because I don't think, even though it probably is flashy.
His Ferrari's not flashy.
And then he's got the Ferrari 328 GTS. And I have to admit, the GTS is one of those cars which I think has to be on anyone who's interested in Porsche's radar. And I say that because at the time, and we did talk about this on the podcast, Steve, it is comparable to the SCs and the 3.2 Carreras at the time. It was something that was, it was like, I want to get a 3.2 Carrera or I want to buy the Ferrari. And I think, I don't know at the time what the price difference was, but I think maybe the Ferrari was more expensive, I think.
It would have been by quite some margin, wouldn't it?
So the Ferrari's probably more expensive. So that's why now it comes to the point when people are talking about this, and I think Matt Farah said it because he bought that black 328 GTS.
Yep.
Where the 3.2 Carrera is going to cost you more, and it is going to cost you more because I've worked it out, would cost me more to get a 3.2 Carrera G50 than it does to get a 328 GTS Ferrari.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you watch videos on YouTube and people say the experience in the GTS is better than an experience in a 911 Targa. Now, I don't know if that's true or not because I haven't driven either of them.
Different, right? But it's just different.
Yeah, I mean, Paul enjoys his. I mean, and I think it's a nice compliment to your, the 2 Porsche garage with that Ferrari. You see the pictures of the GTS with it that he gave me with the Ferrari, which I think I put on Instagram, and it looks great together. It's and I think you have to think about that. Sometimes you have to think outside the lines and say, I'm a Porsche guy and I love Porsches, but I can also like a Ferrari. You know what I mean? Because there is similarities.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You can start throwing other kind of cars in the mix if you want to. Like that question about like basically giving you 120 grand to play with. That's definitely not sort of exclusive to Porsches. You can go and buy whatever you want with that 100 and whatever.
Or do you say sell a 997, get a very well sorted 912, like that slate grey one that was nut and bolt restoration, like a really nicely sorted one. And then get another car which is a performance type car which is not a Porsche. But see, then then the thing is, what would you buy if you buy like a 1M or an M2 or something, or M2 competition or something like that? But then you're in the money where you may as well just buy another Porsche. You know what I mean?
It's not. They're great, but I don't think they're kind of special enough, and I think you would miss. the just sort of like the kind of still the super kind of classic 911 sort of experiences, like my uncle. You know, he didn't have a 911 in the garage for quite a while. He had a whole bunch of other kind of things, and I think he's missed it because not just of the experience, but because it's still like an everyday kind of sports car. Like you can get your thrills, but it's still practical, all of that sort of stuff. His wife's happy to kind of jump in the car, you know. You would. I don't think you'd get that from a 912 if that was your only 911 in your garage.
And I refer to your uncle, and I mean, you know, the fact that he had the 430, you know, and he loved that. He obviously liked the car and he enjoyed it. But, you know, you are, like you said, you are on show. You know what I mean? And I think Paul said the same thing. You know, in the beginning it's fun, and then in the end it gets a little bit to the point where it gets a little bit, I think he said this.
Where it's a bit thin?
Where it gets a bit annoying. You know what I mean? Where people want to take photos of your car and they want to talk to you. You know, there's also that side of it. You know what I mean? There is that side of it.
My uncle hated that. He genuinely kind of got to the point where he really didn't enjoy that, and I think
that's why he sold
also
it, right?
why. Well, it wasn't just that. I think it was because my aunt disliked it even more because, you know, like just the attention. So it got to the point where she just didn't really want to ride in the car with him. And then, you know, like if you're sort of, you know, semi-retired, you've kind of, you know, you got a bit more time in your hands to kind of go on nice little day trips and stuff like that. But every time you kind of go, hey, let's go for, you know, a 2-hour drive up somewhere and go and have a picnic. But she refuses to kind of get in the Ferrari because she doesn't like the attention. He's not going to go and drive by himself, so he's lost, you know, like all the opportunities to enjoy it. So then he's kind of stuck driving to Bunnings by himself, rather than kind of, you know, taking the car out for a nice drive with his missus. Like,
I guess with your uncle, he's got a few cars, and I guess. I think what's hard, and this sounds like, you know, first world problems, but I think what's hard is when you're trying to narrow it down to 2 cars, I think you're always going to struggle. You know what I mean? And I think for me, it's still, like you said, when you said everyone, you know, you want to have a 911 in the garage. I think you're right. That's why I always thought the 997 Carrera with the 912 with a classic, you know, and just say maybe it isn't a 912. Like I said, it's an SC or it's a, you know, or it's a 3 you know, an early G series 911 that's not so expensive. Maybe that's the thing. But if it's a 3-car garage, then it becomes a lot easier. You know what I mean? Because it does, doesn't it? Because you know that the GT3 is one. You know that a classic, a 912 or an SC or something like that, or a SC Targa or something is another. And then the third Porsche, then maybe it's a more modern type Porsche. You know what I mean? Maybe it is a 991
I can answer that one for you because
or a GTS,
that was going to be...
Yeah, maybe it is a 992 Carrera S, you know, like a very easy car to drive, very, you know, maybe that's the perfect thing, a 992 Carrera S.
You offline had asked that question about like it potentially being a podcast topic, so I'll throw in mine. Like, you're right, it would have been a 997, like a 0.1, so my car I'd be more than happy with. And this is sort of like, again, not uber rich Spike Ferriston style. This is just us kind of talking like that, an old air-cooled thing. So yes, like a SC, or I don't think I'd go as old as a 912 kind of thing. I'd probably want to be more in sort of G50 gearbox or an SC or something like that. So probably more like a 80s. An 80s 911, and then I'd throw a Boxster Spider in the mix.
Yeah, Boxster Spider, new one or old one?
GT4
one, 4.0.
Yeah, either that. So yeah, GTS kind of 4-liter, or the previous iteration, like something like that. Again, like if we're not kind of being silly about winning lotto and we're just kind of trying to be vaguely realistic.
No, I think the Spider's a good choice. I just think the Spiders, I just find it too I know it's not that expensive, and I know that Porsche down in Melbourne had one for $220, like a brand new one. You know what I mean? The new Spider, the 4.0 Spider, 4.0, right? 4-liter, right?
Yeah.
They had one, I think, for $220 with the Boxster Spider interior with the red and everything. It's a lovely car, and by all reviews, it drives fantastic. And I think that's a good choice, that one. I think
even the previous gen, though, the one that wasn't developed by the GT kind of division, that would, I'd even sort of like a 6-cylinder, like the 3.2 Boxster S kind of thing, like the last of before they kind of brought the 4-liter back. I reckon that'd be a great car to have in the mix.
If you upgraded your GT3 to a GT3 RS, right?
Yeah.
What would you have as your second one? Would you have something like a Boxster? Would you have like a Classic? Would you have just a normal 997? What would you have?
No, I reckon I'd go air-cooled. I'd probably go air-cooled first.
It seems though from air-cooled and I'm not going to refer, I know everyone say, I keep referring to Magnus Walker, but Magnus Walker said it, I think Spike said it, I think Zuckerman said it. It seems like the 73 911s, and anyone who has a Classic, let me know on DMs and Instagram and tell me if this is the case. Seems like 73 911Es and 73.5 model year 911T is like people are saying are the pick. I think Spike said the 911T. I know Magnus Walker always talks about the 73E. He says the torque and the power band is much better than the S. The S is the more powerful. But he says that the balance-wise, he reckons that 73E is the pick. To him, it's the pick. And last night I thought was interesting, and this is, talking about car choices and not Porsche choices. He said that the car he really enjoys driving so much, and he always goes to it at the moment, is his 928.
928?
Yeah,
right.
Which I thought was interesting, the 928. I mean, he's got an early 78 one and I think an older one as well, but he says he really enjoys driving that car. I think maybe out of the 944s and 924s, that's what he was saying was the pick, but he said he does really enjoy driving that car. So I don't know if the 73 and the 911E is the one, and the 73 and a half, I think Spike said for the 911T was the pick. So maybe there's something with that 73 model year in the 911 that is a bit more special. And I don't know when you look at prices of them, are the 73s more expensive? Maybe they are. Because I know the 74.
No,
I know the 74 is some people say the 74 has got issues. I remember that because there's a 74 left-hand drive for sale at the moment, and I remember reading a few places that the 74 had some issues. I'm not sure what they were.
I don't know enough about it, but yeah.
Anyway, we're just what are we doing? Chewing the fat, dreaming,
fantasizing,
sort of. But I still think I really do still think, and I think. I think what Ajmal's got with the 996 and the 912 is not a bad combination. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, he got into it really, really cheap. I just wanted to mention that actually because Ajmal didn't tell me, and I want people to go and check it out if they have a chance. As you remember, Ajmal from Flat Cap Driver is how people know him. I don't know if people know his name's Ajmal, but Ajmal has got that 996, which was the cheapest 996 in the UK, Steve, remember? The other night, a couple of nights ago, he sent me, he had an article written about him in 911 and Porsche magazine. So if you subscribe to that magazine or if you get it, you should read, see if you can search it out. It's October 2019 edition. His car's on the cover. I think he put a post on a forum and then the editor contacted him. So when next time we have Ajmal on, I want to talk about this actually, because he is going to come back on the podcast and I want to talk about this 996 again. But basically, it was like, his thing about buying that car, and I think this is sort of in my mind because I'm talking to people about owners' stories, and a lot of people are buying 996s, Steve, and obviously for a lot more than Ajmal bought it for, because he bought it as an everyday car. He wanted to recoup all the costs after selling. I think initially he was saying he was going to keep it for a year, right? He wanted to never keep it have the 911 or live for a year. I think he's had it longer than that now. He wanted to recoup all his costs. Like you said, and like we said before, I think it was advertised at 9,000. He got it for £6,500, which is insane. Yes, it had 140 odd thousand miles on it, but even if you were buying that at a normal rate, it should have been 10 for a really rough one, I think, at the time. And I think it was about 15 if you buy them from a dealer or a sorted manual. You know what I mean? And he bought it without driving it too. He bought it without driving it. But then again, when you're spending that much money, the experience he's getting, and you watch his videos on YouTube, the experience is still there. And I think that's great that I keep coming back to this thing about getting into the brand. And is it that bad if you just find a really cheap, high mileage one? Should you take it? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. But the catch to it is that if you have a bad first experience because the car turns out to kind of, have lots of issues and you just have to kind of sink money into it, then that for sure, like from a pure driving thing, like no 911 is a bad 911. You're always going to enjoy it. But if you then just kind of throw in the ownership experience, if that bit, like if the car's unreliable or it starts to kind of cost you a shitload of money because it was cheap from the beginning and stuff like that, and this was your first Porsche, that's probably not the best. It's probably not the best introduction to the brand.
Yeah. It's a dilemma, isn't it? It's a dilemma of getting the right, like how much do you pay based on how much it's going to cost you? You know, where's that happy medium? You know what I mean? And how many years do you want to wait? You know what I mean? Do you just want to get in there now? I know you don't want your first
It seems like it's just going to get harder and harder though.
Yeah, it does,
just with
doesn't
the
it?
prices kind of escalating, yeah.
And you don't want your first experience to be awful. So like,
Yes.
you know, how long do you wait? And it's not easy. It's not easy. You know what I mean? And I know sometimes when you're wanting a 911 and you can't get one, it feels like it's never going to happen. That's why you know, sometimes you have to change your barriers. Sometimes, you have to change your borders.
My cousin, same side of the family as my uncle that we keep sort of talking around. He's a mad car person too, same side of the family, but he's into his Volkswagens. You know, he's had numerous GTIs. He's got a Golf R. He's got, you know, wife and 2 little kids as well, and all that sort of stuff. But he keeps kind of playing with his cars. He keeps sort of updating it every couple of years and stuff like that. And both myself and my uncle keep saying to him, it's like, you stop dicking around and just, you know, go and get yourself a Porsche, like even if it's an old one, because you'll stop kind of craving, you'll stop kind of, you know, trying to chase like all these kind of other things like, you know, chipping your turbo cars and stuff like that. It's just a different kind of experience, and we guarantee that you'll really enjoy it. But he keeps sort of saying, oh, but I can't afford it. And I guess the longer it goes, the harder it is going to be to kind of get into it.
Yeah.
Which is a pity for kind of, you know, proper rev heads kind of thing.
But once you get one, you never turn back. And I think that's the problem is like you get a hot hatch and you try to mod it and make it like a Porsche. It's never going to be a Porsche. You know what I mean? It's a completely different thing.
Different thing, yeah.
And once you're in a Porsche and, you know, David that I spoke to.
Hard to go back, really hard to go back.
Who's coming in a future episode, when I spoke to him, he said, you know, like, what was it like in that first drive? And I'm giving away part of his story, but I'm sure it's okay. But he, you know, he looked through the rear vision mirror. You know, it hadn't really sunk in. He looked through the rear vision mirror, and then he sees the Porsche sticker on the back of the window. You know what I mean? You know, that Porsche sticker that's on mine, and it's like then it just sunk in. It's like I'm driving a 911. Like I've done it. I've got it.
Yeah.
Especially when you've been waiting for so long. You know, been waiting for 20 years to get one or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like you said, the enjoyment that you got out of it from helping your friend, and then seeing his enjoyment when he's driving it. And I guess you had that same enjoyment when I bought mine, you know, that I've been talking about it for so long and I eventually had one. You know what I mean? And you could see how happy I was, you know, anxious and happy at the same time. And
but then you're kind of busting because like when your mates or your family or whatever are doing all of these things, then you kind of go, cool, now that you've got one, like now we can kind of go on drives and we can talk about all the same sort of shit. We can talk about the same sort of mods and all of this sort of stuff that other people think that we're talking another language, but it's just like all consuming, and you kind of just have this whole new kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun. And that's what most people get in the brand say, you know, that they meet so many people. So many people are so friendly. You know, the community around Porsche, you know, this podcast, you know, the thing that we're doing, Steve, you and I, that we sort of don't think much of, the thing we're doing with the community is people really enjoy it. No, but you know what I mean? People really enjoy it. And it's, and this is what it's all about. And that's what's great about you know, we're not doing an ad for Porsche, but that's what's great about Porsche. It really is. I mean, you know, it really, really is. And in general, most people are very nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You've talked, the owner chats thing that you've been doing, you've been obviously talking to some they sound like really cool kind of people. You know, like we kind of laugh about offline the fact that there's all these people that are like possibly back in Sydney that when you kind of come back, there's potentially kind of like a group of people to kind of go on a drive with, and I'm not great with strangers.
But I think that's a good idea though. It's like we can do a PorscheCooled cars and coffee. David yesterday.
What's his wee business?
David yesterday was saying that when we go, you know, I was saying how I want to do a drive up north and I want to do a drive down south. I think it was David. It could have been David or Paul. I think it was David yesterday. He said, maybe you should organize you can, organize a thing down here, a get together. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
yep.
In Sydney, we're definitely going to do it. I think we have to do it because, with Craig and Justin and, I think we definitely do it. And there's a couple of other people that I've been talking to. There's another person I've been talking to on Instagram. I won't mention his name. Another guy on Instagram who's got a 996 GT3, which I sent you the images of, who listens to the podcast.
Yep.
Which is a fantastic car. Into watchers like me as well and you. I mean, this...
Yep.
I think what it is, Steve, is that it's not always easy to meet like-minded people. And this thing called Porsche makes us meet like-minded people, and then the further you deep, it's like we have other similarities and other interests that cross over. So it's fun, and I know you're looking forward to it. Weren't you going for a drive with the guy from the upholstery store in Sydney? I won't mention the name just in case. Yeah, weren't you going with a drive with them with their Porsche group?
No, he just mentioned that the next time he kind of because he's got like a little baby daughter similar age to mine, so we were just sort of trading stories, and he just sort of said to me once that he kind of woke up early one morning and just sort of needed to kind of clear his head, so he went down down south through the national park. And
we were
just sort of trading stories, and he sort of said to me, well, that's what he said. He said, oh, look, next time I'm going to go and do that, I'll give you a buzz. It's like, yeah, man, like, completely cool.
You be awake.
I will be.
I saw that Sportomatic thing at Holland Cars in Sydney, the one you were telling me about that was coming out, the yellow one. Yeah, I think it was about 130,000, but it's Sportomatic though.
Has he sold it?
I don't know. I saw it up on his site. I think he's got another Porsche there that looked interesting too. I forget what it is. I think it's a silver one. But the Sportomatic
996?
Yeah, possibly.
He sort of he had a 996 that he's kind of done the interior up and put that kind of crazy Carrera sort of fabric in it.
I don't know. I didn't see that. I just want to go back very quickly because we have to leave. We're over an hour. But going back to your friend that bought the GT3, as we discussed, he was going to buy the turbo that was for sale in interstate, right? He was going to buy a turbo, 996 turbo. Yep. And obviously the difference between a 996 turbo and a GT3 in Australia is about a good 996 turbo and a GT3 is probably $60,000 Australian, roundabout. So obviously you're paying a lot more. But I reckon, don't you think that now he's got the GT3, he's probably looking back and thinking, I'm glad I didn't get the turbo.
He literally said that.
Yeah.
He said, I'm so glad I got the GT3. And it's like, yeah, I could have told you that too, but like obviously it's not my money to spend or whatever. Like I just assumed that, like when you're kind of working to a budget, like if you're going to ask somebody like me, what do you think I'm going to sort of say to you? You go buy a GT3, of course. Well, if you can afford it, go and get one. You know what I
mean? Like if my budget's 150, my budget isn't 220. My budget or 200. My budget is 150. Exactly. You know what I mean? But if your budget is 150,
I'm not going to tell you go and buy a 997 GT3. I'd probably tell you to go and consider a 996 GT3 versus like a 996 turbo. Like at least it's a little bit closer, and you probably have to stretch a little bit more. But it's not kind of you're not going to cross shop those two things. But no,
that's what I was thinking when the 996 GT3 that's 179. I thought, well, that's a kind of progression you would go from. You know what I mean? You would go, oh, I got 150. Maybe I can push it for 180. Even then, it's a bit of a stretch, and there's a 996 GT3. But then I'm going to go to, what most GT3s in Australia are over 200 in 997. So you've jumped up a lot. Your budget all of a sudden has become like, what is my budget? And I'm moving my hands out.
And obviously,
Steve, what is my budget?
It's sort of like me taking the piss out of you as in terms of like, obviously in a very fortunate situation where if you can kind of afford it, then absolutely all credit to you, and everybody kind of works hard for their kind of their passions and stuff like that. But he sort of said, oh man, like I'm so glad I kind of got this, like it was worth all of that sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like I'm pretty certain that like 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 people are going to go between those two things if you're shopping for a weekend fun car, and it doesn't need to be practical, and there's all these other kind of parameters because it's still about the purpose of the car, but the GT3 is going to be the more fun, it's going to be the more fulfilling kind of option.
Absolutely. And as we say, you buy to your budget. But if your budget is not that budget,
Variable.
then buy towards your budget. But don't
Yeah.
wait too long. Don't be like me and sitting on the fence for a while. But my situation is different because I am sort of, transient.
Yours is harder because
I
you're
feel
not
like
always.
I'm
Yeah,
gypsy.
you're not always.
I keep saying to my wife Natasha, I feel like a gypsy at the moment. I don't want to be transient anymore.
Yeah.
But
That's
anyway,
fair.
but yeah, we are lucky enough that we can actually do it. My problem is I like saving money and I like to see the balance grow. So when I have to take it out of there,
Saving. What's that?
but then saving is
hell.
not a good investment. This is the problem. Porsches are.
Yeah, it's weird how that's kind of become a thing where
Yeah.
it's a good investment. So you've got another bit of ammunition when you're sort of talking to your better half about it.
Yep, cars or cryptocurrency. That's the thing. One or the other.
Wow. Okay. Is that still a thing? Is it?
I've been looking into it actually, but that's another story.
Yeah,
All right, mate. Let's call it a day. Let's call it an episode.
cool.
This is an episode. What number episode is this? Does everyone know? This is number. I don't put the episode numbers on the podcast, but they come up on Apple. This is number 58. If you guys are interested, we're up to number 58, which is insane when I think about it now, Steve. But anyway,
You've been working hard, mate.
we keep talking.
Two a week is a lot of work.
Yeah, I've got 3 to edit now with this one, so I've got 3 to get out of the way editing. But I don't have to rush the
I
other
can help
2.
you with it if you want.
I don't have to rush the other 2. I've got time. I'll do it over the weekend. It's called Cooled. All right. Thanks, Steve.
All right, mate.
I'll see
No
you
worries.
soon.
Take care. Have a good week.
Yep, you too. It's cold here. You can see in the background. It's so cold. I've actually got like a sweat on today because I'm actually cold.
it's
Normally I
warm in
just walk
Sydney.
around in my t-shirt. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. That was Steve all the way from Sydney via Zoom. I hope the sound's okay today. It's been pretty good lately with us, but I hope it is. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.